You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, rins, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today.
Welcome back to the 7th grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about agents of darkness. Ladies and gentlemen, put your spiritual armor on because we're about to go deep. Let's go. So, I'm going to start in the middle with this. I'm going to start in a part of history that most people know on face value, World War II. World War II was a big time in the history of the world because the Nazi Party rose to power and caused straight up chaos and killed a lot of people, all for the sake of ideology. But hidden underneath that ideology were power-hungry people. People driven by the desire to control, the desire for real, true power. Before the Nazi Party had formed, there were many Germans that belonged to the Thule Society, which is one of many occult groups that existed but were folded into the Nazi Party before World War II at its very outset. Probably around the late 30s is when all these occult groups were folded into this cohesive German group.
Look, the Thule Society believed that they were the descendants of the Nephilim.
Mm-hmm.
In the Old Testament, they talk about basically sons of man, saw the daughters of God, and they thought they were beautiful, and they had kids, and they were giants amongst the land. That's what they talk about. So with these people, see, I'm not sure about what religion.
It was before. It started before. Because their concept is that they are descendants of Thor and the Norse gods. So it existed before that. And see, you got to understand the groundwork that built up all this. So Germany, before the Nazis, before even World War I, there were all these occult groups who believed in pagan ways, and they also believed in things such as dowsing and palmistry, all these old occult teachings.
The whole thing is during World War II, even before that, but there were a lot of things like the dark arts, and they were combining different dark rituals together to create basically a superpower. They wanted to control the world. And what people don't really understand, there are actually people out there that really wish bad on the entire world. And that's what we're dealing with we're simply just trying to rule a landmass. They're trying to take over the world. This is straight up, James Bond shit.
It wasn't. It was more to than that because their motives were sinister, and that's exactly what I'm gonna get into now. So, back in around 1937, there was a lot of research going into the search for the articles of the crisis of crucifixion, these artifacts from the Bible, and there was a guy that the Nazis had hired to write a book, and the book was called Lucifer's Den. And so basically, like, what this book talked about was about the crucifixion and what happened after the crucifixion. Now, the guy that wrote this was a guy named Villigut, and he believed that he was a direct descendant of Thor. But because of his experience and his knowledge, the SS paid him to write this book. It's called Lucifer's Court. Lucifer's Court was the name of the book, and it was published in 1937. It was passed around to SS officers as propaganda to get them riled up, so they would go out and be gung ho about going to these places like North Africa, which is just really a smokescreen for them looking for the Ark of the Covenant, and deep into Europe looking for the Spear of Destiny. The Spear of Destiny being the spear that pierced Jesus' rib so he would die faster when he was on the cross.
Look, what my friend is saying, movies like the Raiders of the Lost Ark were based on real life events. Now, I'm not saying that everything happened that way. What I'm saying is the search for these mystic relics, if you want to call them, has been going on for years. And the reason they wanted them is because they wanted to back that army so their army could rule the world and things like that.
So a lot of this is based in the ideology of Arianism. And there's two types in Arianism. The one I'm referring to is where the Nazis believe that they came from a superior race. And they believe that this knowledge was started by extraterrestrial connection in Atlantis 10,000 years ago. And when Atlantis sank, some of that information was taken to the Himalayas, where it was filtered out into the Orient, into the Hindu and Japanese Shinto religions, as well as the white Christian mysticism groups. But it was reassembled with the artifacts of Christ, crucifixion, and it is their goal through retaining these artifacts from the crucifixion of Christ, as well as re-exploring or digging up the information about these old knowledge-based teachings from Atlantis from 10,000 years ago that were passed down from contact with extraterrestrials. Now, so this you have to understand, like, this is the motivation. So they were doing these things because they were going after true power, true, real power that motivated them, not wealth, but power. The type of power that makes people devote their lives to you, people that will die in kamikaze, attacks for you, suicide bombers, these same type of things. So there is an ideology behind all of this. But the thing is that you have to realize that every major religion, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, comes from some form of divine contact, either from God or from angels. In the Old Testament, Moses got a revelation through contact with the burning bush and took that as a communication from God. Islam was started because Muhammad was in a cave and took dictation instructions from the angel Gabriel, and on and on. And you can find it all through the Torah where they talk about communications with angels. The Mormons talk about the same thing.
Divine contact. Now when you look at the Egyptian religions, they believe that their ruler was divine, like he was some kind of way related to God. Same thing with Christ, God's son. This goes on for years. This is not a new concept. Now, we're not dissing anybody's religion, but what we're saying is that they were searching for the divine contact. They were looking for some kind of thing that would put them on the level of God on earth, and people would have to follow them no matter what they did.
Now, going from the Nazi regime back further into time, we're going to go back further into time now, and we're going to talk about 66 AD. 66 AD saw the destruction of the Temple of Solomon, and it was destroyed by the Roman Empire. It was destroyed partially as a consequence because the occupants of Jerusalem were years before beginning to fight back against the Roman control. And so as a consequence of this, and probably on purpose to sack the temple was destroyed. So when the Temple of Solomon was destroyed, the artifacts that were inside the temple were taken back to the Roman Empire. Now, at some point, Rome, of course, falls and is crumbled. And part of that is due to the invasion of Rome, or the partial invasion of Rome by Hannibal and his big-ass elephants. Because he did put a dent in the Roman Empire, but it showed other enemies of Rome that you could hurt them.
They were vulnerable.
Yes. So Rome falls, and Rome is sacked. So the articles of the crucifixion, the archives, the artifacts of the crucifixion are stolen. Now they're stolen by Europeans that are crusading through Europe. Now, these crusaders, the first crusade was led by a Frenchman named Dagobert. He believed that he was a Merovingian. What is a Merovingian? Merovingians were a lineage of people that believed they were descended directly from the blood of Christ, meaning Christ did not die on the cross, that he survived and took a wife and had children. And those children became corrupt, and their children became even more corrupt over time. And so it goes. And because they believe they're from divine birthright, remember I said belief here. They believe they're from divine birthright. They believe that they are the true kings of Europe. And so Dagobert went to Jerusalem to find what he thought would be the articles of the crucifixion. And this is how the Knights Templar were formed. They were formed because they were a group of knights that were used to protect the highways and the roads for pilgrims. Now, of course, these weren't just poor pilgrims. These are the wealthy aristocrats of Europe who were also going looking for treasure.
Don't forget, they were also making pilgrimages to the Holy Land. So that was the whole thing. Is
right,
that
so
they
we're
were going to
talking about
protect
the
them.
Holy Land. So, thing is that they needed protection. And this is how the Knights Templar came to be. But the king of that province gave them a wing of his palace that was directly over what remained of the Temple of Solomon. Now,
Supposedly.
that's what they say. So, here's the deal. Their motivation changed over time. Their motivation on the surface was to protect pilgrims and be these pious, celibate knights.
Now, wasn't it a Demolay? Wasn't he the ruler of them?
That's later. That's later. That's
Yeah,
about like that's like 150 years later. Jacques de Molay.
yeah.
So the thing is that these powerful aristocrats had ulterior motives for visiting the Holy Land and finding these artifacts, the remaining artifacts that had not been brought back to Rome, or the ones that were missing. And so these people that are on these crusades, they're not doing these for holy reasons. It's because these people are practicing the dark arts, magic. Now, to practice magic and to have an effective spell, you need 3 things. You need blood, saliva, or sexual fluid. 3 different substances that contain DNA, that contain the life force of a being. Which is why you see, people who practice, the arts of the Caribbean, which is really the arts of Africa, sacrificing animals, sacrificing chickens, sacrificing goats.
Chickens, yeah.
Because there's DNA, there's energy in that blood. And so all this goes back to the beginning of time, to this battle between the powers of light and the powers of dark. And so when man was created, man was persuaded by the darkness. And the battle ensued ever since. It's been going on and on and on. It still continues to this day. But the thing is that you move forward to the 1500s, and there along comes a man named John Dee. John Dee was the court sorcerer for Queen Elizabeth I. Now, this court sorcerer would protect her magically from the Roman Church, the Catholic Church. Now, the Catholic Church, if you look at what's going on, there's a fight between Protestants and Catholics. The Protestant view of Christianity is more of a personal one-on-one with Jesus. And it's more of a direct line to God, as opposed to the Catholic Church, which actually poses as a middleman. And because if you look at the Catholic practices, there's all these types of saints you have to pray to. There's all types of
when you pray, your prayer doesn't go right to God. Your prayer goes to Mary. Yeah, it goes to Saint Peter or whatever. Then it goes to Mary. Then it goes to Jesus. Then it goes to God. There's like levels. Your prayer has to stop, talk to somebody, and so what you're saying with the Protestants, they believe like you don't need a middleman. You have direct contact with Jesus. The divinity is everywhere, and you don't need help or money.
Correct.
And
so because of this ideological split, there were occult cold wars going on throughout Europe, all throughout the Middle and Dark Ages. And in these occult cold wars, people were in within the Catholic Church were putting hexes and using voodoo type dolls against Queen Elizabeth, who was a Protestant, but she had a sorcerer in her court who was John Dee. Now, John Dee, he took divination, scrying, speaking to, calling out angels, because he said that, all right, if Moses spoke to God and got knowledge through that way, and Muhammad got he got directions, information from Gabriel,
Gabriel.
and then the Hebrews of the Torah also communicated with angels. He said to himself, "Well, I can communicate with angels, and I can get the information that I need," and that is how Enochian magic was formed. Enochian meaning Enoch, meaning the books of Enoch, meaning the knowledge of the books that were taken out of the Bible by Constantine at the Council of Nicaea. Now, this is the trip right here. He, on his deathbed, confessed to being, hold on. He confessed to being an Aryan. Now, I'm not talking about the Indo-European Aryan. I'm talking about the Aryans of Arius, who lived lived around 321 to 385. Arius believed that Christ did not die on the cross. He believed Christ was just a man. He believed Christ was of God, but he was born of flesh as a man and died a different life than what we're taught. He was seen to be a heretic.
They were trying to kill Arius. The original Aryans were the original priests that said, like, no, like this walking on water, this miracle, this amazing dude you talk about, that's not how Jesus was. He was a normal guy. He taught us. And they were basically going against that church. They were trying to stop them from putting up the Bible as we know it. And they tried to kill him. And Arius and his followers, they took off like, all right, bro, they're about to kill you. You need to get the hell out of here.
Right.
And
exactly. So, which is crazy because, like, so this is the guy who's controlling the editing of the Bible, actually has beliefs that are counter to what is being published, what is going to be sent around the world as the most read book of all time.
Now, the other thing is, that made, when we were talking about Constantine on his deathbed, that's when, didn't he get baptized on his deathbed? Didn't he wait till like the last minute? He's like, hey, you know what? I did my partying just in case.
Okay, so there you have the background that's set up for what we're about to talk about now. You have the destruction of Palestine, which saw the destruction of the Temple of Solomon. So then, years later, after Arius, after the Council of Nicaea, after the Bible is assembled, then you have these Frenchmen who come to Palestine looking for these artifacts of the crucifixion, not knowing that some of them have been taken to Europe and that the Roman Church the Catholic Church has this already. But they're there.
Okay, hey, let me interject something. Like when people talk about the cross that Christ was crucified on, and they're like, okay, that's just allegory. That's not real. Yes, they supposedly, again, there are churches that say they have parts of the real cross, and when you talk to those old school, I don't want to give the wrong names. I don't. But when you talk to these old churches, they say like, hey, no, he was crucified on an X. When you look at these older religions,
it was actually a tree.
The ones, look it up. What they're saying is people weren't crucified on a cross, a T. They were crucified on an X. And when I'm just going by what I read, I'll find the book and send it to you. But they're saying that he was crucified on an X, like one hand up, 2 hands up, 2 feet on it is an X. It's not a cross as we know it to be today. And what they're saying is they actually have pieces of the cross. Like some of these different old churches say, yeah, this is a part of the real cross. Like, you can dispute it, of course, but that's the stuff that we're talking about. People are on a search looking for these things that have divine power. And what my brother was about to tell you guys is that there are real bad people that have certain things that they believe give them the right to do what they're going to do to us as a world, as a society. And even when you talk about like African artifacts. There's more African artifacts in Europe or in private collections. When you, I remember one of the things that we read about Ivan Van Sertima. He talks about negotiating the parts of the Sphinx's nose was in a private collection. So why would somebody be holding the nose of the Sphinx? Because
Knowledge.
it's divine. Yes, it's knowledge. It's divine. They're holding on to these. You have collectors. A lot of those heads down in
Say what you really mean. Say what you really mean.
the Sphinx was black. You know, the nose got shot off by by Napoleon's men. We get that, but
These
there's
people,
also
these people who collect these things, these wealthy people who pay for knights to go to Palestine in 1099 and 1100 AD to go look for things. These people who fund the building of castles. These people who control the flow of kingdoms in Europe. They have strange habits. They belong to
desires.
strange groups.
Organizations, yes.
Yes.
Well, how about this? How about those Olmec heads? Remember, there was like 11. I don't want to give the wrong number, but it's like 11 or 13 Olmec heads. They're all like 5 tons or better. You know, some are 15 tons. I heard like 2 or 3. Look it up. 2 or 3 of those Olmec heads are missing. They're in somebody's private collection. If you have enough money to steal a huge statue like that, and it never popped up in the black market, it's never been sold. What is it? Why would you have
Where are
that?
they? Somebody
Going
owns
again,
that.
going back to Ivan Van Sertima, he's telling you that, like, whenever these discussions about who discovered America starts popping up, you have people that have things in their private collections that you would not believe, and so that quest, that desire to have exclusivity, to have something special, to be a collector, whatever you want to call this. Like, some people just are collectors; they just want to collect stuff, but other people, they're looking for lost knowledge. They're looking for power. They feel that this makes me part of this divine, and I can do whatever I want. I can't be stopped. You always hear,
That
you always see these
is
movies.
their concept of true power. That is how
Yes,
they
yes.
see true power, because it is something.
Money's got power.
It's not tangible in the way you and I know things. It's like I said, it is something that will cause men to pledge their allegiance to you, that will kill for you to keep these things private and quiet, silent, by death if need be. These are the people that control these things. These are the people that go and hunt down these artifacts. These are the people that give rise to organizations that run the world on their time and on their script. You have to realize who these people are. And the thing is that human beings, to a fault, they trust people. And they trust people way too much, because they think because a person belongs to a group that does a lot of philanthropy and all this stuff that's good for people, that they're a good person and that they come from good people and their whole lineage is good people and everything that begats them will be good. No. No, 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 no. That is not the case, and history has proven otherwise. That's what we're talking about here today.
Look, the idea behind America on the surface is that you don't have a king, that anybody can achieve a status based on what they want to do. So the concept is cool, but when you start doing your research, you start finding out about the New World Order, and like for instance, the Temple of Solomon. People tell you that it's been rebuilt. If you start doing your research, it's been rebuilt. You're like, no, it's not. No, it's not. The White House and the Capitol building are direct replicas. If you find, which one is it? Is it the Capitol building or is it the White House? That's a replica of the Temple of Solomon. I forgot. Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is the idea that that doesn't matter. That's old. But the annals of history, the things that we're staring right, they're doing it. People are assembling these things right in our faces, and we don't realize it.
So,
how many of these cities have the same kind of setup? Like DC, everybody knows when you look at how DC is set up, it's designed for sunlight and moonlight. It's designed for, it's a Masonic symbol. The whole city is a Masonic symbol.
Hey, slow down. I got some more to drop.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So going back to the 13th century, midway through the 13th century, about 1250, 1260, the Hauska Castle was built 29 miles north of Prague in the Czech Republic. Now, most castles, when they're built for the reason of fortification, to defend against something. as a way to protect people against invaders. When you look at Hauska Castle, geographically, there's nothing to defend there. It's built on the edge of a sheer cliff that's surrounded by a forest. There's nothing to defend there except before this castle was built, there was a very, 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 very deep hole in the ground. Now, before this castle was built, there were reports from villagers that would say winged creatures would crawl out of this hole and fly away. Now, the story goes that Hauska Castle was built to cover this hole that many consider to be a portal to hell or Middle Earth, the center of the earth, or whatever's down there, whatever inhabitants are down there. People just call it hell, whatever. When you look at the castle and you look at the surroundings, it doesn't make sense why it's there. But this castle was built as a stronghold over a hole.
It wasn't designed to keep people and bad things out. It was designed to keep people and bad things in.
Yes, it's a plug for a bathtub. But listen, let me finish what I'm saying. So the thing is that over the years, criminals were captured, and before they were executed, they were offered the option to be lowered into the hole and held there for hours. Many people chose execution.
Death. What we did.
So if you're offered freedom over being lowered into a hole, or you're offered freedom if you're lowered into a hole, you can survive for hours, just dangling on a rope. Wouldn't you do it? Right? Yes. Common sense says yes. But apparently, the people of that region understand that there is something sinister coming out of that hole. The Nazis, when they occupied that area, would often experiment in the castle in many different ways. Now, leading up to the Nazi occupation, aristocrats would flock there once a year and enact in magic rituals. So, going back to what I said about communicating with angels, there is a dark side to the ruling class of the earth that communicates with dark entities practicing dark magic, sex magic, if you will. So, you have the Hauska Castle on top of this hole to the center of the earth, to hell, whatever you want to call it, where these strange entities come up out of there. They don't know what it is. It could be a portal to another dimension. We don't know. It could be Europe's version of Skinwalker Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like it is. But the thing is that this castle, still to this day, no one has an explanation for what it really is and why, or what's down there. Like, they won't even, the college and the university won't even send an excavation crew down into the hole. All they can tell you is that they've dropped a line in there and it's several miles deep.
But what this tells you is that the ruling class, these rich, wealthy people, these powerful people, when they find out something about these things, then they're like, "Well, look,
I
want to stay in. I want to stay in power. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll make whatever offer or sacrifice I have to make to stay in power to keep these peasants away from me. I'll appeal whatever god or demon or deity or they don't care who they have to make a deal with to stay in power. And that's the kicker. That's the thing that you need to recognize. Somebody in power.
So then, of course, it's going to get through on the grapevine. The King of Belgium, the King of Spain, the King of the Czech Republic, all these different European kings,
royal houses,
and
they invite them over,
and the dukes and the wannabe rich people. They want to be royalty. They found out about this and they start having these parties, and they start clicking up and like, hey man, I practice this and it'll guarantee you power and like you'll thrive. You should do it. Just listen. Just kill your oldest. All right, take your oldest child and just throw him into the pit.
All
right,
if
you don't do that, just listen. Have a servant that really hates him, cut his throat, and let the blood pour into this goblet. Okay, and then you don't have to drink, but the rest of us will drink the blood. Okay, and then listen. We're all gonna sit around in a circle, and we're gonna sing this song with very particular lyrics, and then something's gonna happen. All the candles are gonna go out. Listen, man, this is dark magic. These people are practicing dark magic. But the problem is, it didn't stop there. It didn't stop just because the internet was created. It didn't stop because Bill Clinton was the president. It didn't stop because Gorbachev, wanted to be a good guy and didn't want nuclear war to happen. It didn't stop because we finally had a black president. It didn't stop. is still going on. These rich
And it
ass
doesn't matter
people,
who's in charge. It doesn't matter who's in charge.
right?
These people have some sick ass beliefs,
Because
and
the
when
invisible hand is the one that picks everybody who becomes the ruling class. The ruling class in America is they're politicians. So these ruling class have strange and weird vices. Benjamin Franklin, when there was an excavation done on his former home in Philadelphia, skeletons of children were found with holes in their heads. Skeletons of children under his house. He belonged to the Hellfire Club. Look that up. Go look up the
look,
Hellfire Club.
here's the crazy part. Remember, Benjamin Franklin would not run for president because he said he was not worthy. He knew he was a deviant. He said, "Nah, man, I can't do that position. I'm not
He
worthy."
because he also feared that some of his dirt would get out. Somebody that would muckrake and get out some stuff that he was doing with children, or
They would
just
find, yeah,
or
it
kidnap
wasn't
black
buried deep.
African slaves. Yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't buried deep. You can find it. He was afraid of being found out, whatever it was. And remember, he was a sexual deviant. We know that he believed in sex with anybody and any. It's when you read the memoirs, he was fucking. It wasn't cool.
he's into some strange. He was definitely into some strange, but going from house to castle in the 1300s, excuse me, the 13th century, we're going to go back to the 1500s when Queen Elizabeth was the queen. And that time, while there was all these cold wars going on, you had all types of, magicians of different levels, trying to take her out. But John Dee was her court sorcerer who protected her. He is also the person who gave her the concept for the British Empire. The British Empire where the sun never set on it, meaning it stretched so far across time zones that even though it may be dark in England, in Asia, the sun is shining still. So that shows you how far reaching their power was, because that British Empire gave rise to Skull and Bones and the East India Trading Company. The East India Trading Company, they took the model of the pirates and put on uniforms and pledged allegiance to the Queen instead of pirates who were just freelancers. Well, the East India Trading Company, they were peddling dope to China.
a heron.
Heroin.
Yeah, it was bad.
So you got to understand, while time goes on and history is happening, you have people out there who are in power, who have ulterior motives, who worship the unseen, the most foul and evil of the unseen, who will sacrifice children and women in sex rituals to these dark creatures. These people who then, throughout time, form the Nazi Party. And the Nazis, who have done all type of experiments, go to House Castle and interact with these demons, because this idea in the occult, this belief in the occult existed in Germany. So the Nazis didn't invent this. All they did was they brought these people into their fold because the local leaders of these groups, their influence was so great that the Nazis had to convince them to join their party, that it was a benefit to them to join them. They couldn't just kill these people, because that would just throw the balance of power off. Because then
Look. Here's the thing. You were talking Skull and Bones earlier, and you're talking Nazi Party, and people in America think that that can't affect us. What's the point of talking about that? But let's talk about Skull and Bones. For Skull and Bones, whose Skull and Bones are they? Do you know? The ones the Skull and Bones that they worship.
Oh, you're talking about no. Okay, so first of all, hold on a second. So now I can tell you that the Skull and Bones comes from the pirate flag.
No.
Wait. Hold on. Now here's the thing, though. Yes, it is, because that Skull and Bones on the pirate flag is not the Skull and Bones that you think it is. Now.
Yes.
Now, but here's the thing, though. Geronimo, as recently as the 1900s, as
Yes.
recently as the 1900s, George
Was
Bush, George
Prescott Bush.
Prescott Bush, Herbert,
Herbert.
George H.W. Bush, he stole the bones. He raided the grave of the Indian chief
He was
Geronimo.
a telegrapher in Oklahoma. Found out about this. They had a meeting with his brethren from Yale. He went down there to start this organization, and they stole it. And even to this day, the descendants of Geronimo have sued to get those bones back,
And they
and
won't
they
give it
cannot
back.
win that. Yes, they will not release those. So it's getting deep. It's getting deep, Roscoe.
Okay. Yes. Now here's the deal. Here's why it's deep, because that plays exactly into what we're talking about magical artifacts. Because those bones have DNA. Those bones have the blood of Geronimo, a powerful
A
spirit.
warrior. He's a
He's a
powerful warrior.
powerful warrior.
And so, and the other thing is, you got to remember. So this is an American organization. So when you want to start an American organization, you don't want to go back to the old gods, do you? You don't want to go back to the old power. You want new power. And Geronimo was new power for them at the time. Please, and please, I hope I don't offend any Native Americans. But what I'm trying to tell you is that meant something to these sick motherfuckers. And so they're willing to, and we all know that organization has deep roots in the CIA. We all know that organization has had with 3 or 4 presidents, stuff like that. So don't pretend like, this is just poppycock, because those people in power are still. I had this question for a guy that was in the military who doesn't believe in God, or doesn't believe in the devil. I'm like, okay, that's cool. What if your commanding officer is a Satanist, and he gives you an order, and you're like, oh, it doesn't work like that. It works exactly like that.
It works exactly like that. Why doesn't it?
One of the early religions, we know Christianity was recognized by the Marines, but also Satanism was recognized by the Marines. That's crazy, but now they might have changed that. But when you do your research, there's certain religions that were
No, the Church of Satan was recognized by the Army, and Anton LaVey was a soldier in the Army who went off to begin the Church of Satan.
I think they both recognize it. I don't want to give wrong dates and wrong times, but some of the research from some of the Marines I talked to, like, hey, because you'd be surprised what the hell you'll see in these bases. I'm like, okay, I'll take your word for it. You ain't got to convince me of shit.
So here's the deal. The problem is America was founded by Masonic refugees. The government of America was founded by Masonic refugees who wanted to start their own country based on their own morals and dogma. And they wanted to escape the European aristocrats and ruling class. Now, so here's the thing. Evangelical Christianity and fundamental Christianity runs America. Now, their ideology believes that there will be an apocalypse. They believe that the end times will come. There were presidents. Bush the first was one of them. Ronald Reagan was another one who believes that these wars that they were fighting were accelerating in times and bringing about the apocalypse. So people forget this, and they divorce themselves because, he's a good guy, and I don't think he would do anything to harm us. Well, you're a potato head, because these people, like I said, they belong to groups, and these groups have beliefs and ideologies and morals and dogma. And those who know what I'm saying understand what I'm saying. But these people who want to bring about the apocalypse will do so in the worst way possible, including going to war with Babylon. That is Iraq. That is going to the Middle East and justifying a war that made no logical sense with Saddam Hussein. And while you're there, we're going to use this as a smokescreen so we can raid all of the cultural sites and the Grand Museum and steal these artifacts. This is the second major crusade in history, and nobody recognizes it for that. Because you had in that museum Babylonian artifacts that the archaeologists of the West had no access to. So they couldn't catalog this stuff because this is a dictatorship. Saddam Hussein runs this stuff. He don't want these white people in there fumbling around with that shit. Matter of fact, he believed that he was a reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar from the Bible, from Babylon.
Yep.
Hold it. Now, This flies in the face of Arianism because Aryans didn't believe that Iranians and Babylonians were descended. See, okay, this is the problem. The Aryan, and I'm not talking about Arians, I'm talking about these Indo-European believing people who believe that they are descendants of aliens from Atlantis. They didn't believe that the Iranians and that the Babylonians were because they were
Are
mixed
legitimate.
because they were
They weren't
mixed blood.
legitimate.
They were mixed blood. And the Aryans believed that it was the mixing of the blood that filtered out the knowledge and the pure bloodline from these extraterrestrials. But if anybody knows anything about Babylon, and if you look at these clay tablets and you read little Zechariah Sitchin and you read counterpoint views on Zechariah Sitchin, you see that
Yeah.
there was alien interference in ancient Babylon, the Nephilim, Enki and Enlil.
And I don't knock you for everybody
So
else.
what's it
That's what he's
sounds
saying.
like? So what's it sound like is my team is against your team. So it sounds like a group of aliens from Atlantis was beefing with aliens that were in Babylon, or that those two different races, because they got Star Wars going on, just out there. Just because we can't see doesn't mean people ain't beefing on the other side of the galaxy or the side of the universe. Point being, the people, the humans that we elect, in their weird, twisted ideology and their strange vices, go looking for these articles of power.
This goes back to our original statement. Just because you don't believe it doesn't mean the people that you work for don't believe it. Because if they believe this crazy shit,
Hey,
and they believe in sacrificing kids, and they believe in doing some nasty shit,
I
then
worked with a high-ranking Army officer that was in command when they raided Saddam's palace. And he talked about some stuff that he saw that dropped his jaw.
Hmm.
Yes, the spoils. He said the spoils of war were ridiculous. But he said the stuff that they got in the palace was nothing compared to what the soldiers got in the museum. He said those soldiers at the museum showed up with saws, with power saws, with jackhammers, with cases, ready to grab stuff and load it up. They were sent there on a mission from people in power who pay for soldiers to go to war. You hear me? The same people that, paid for soldiers to go to Jerusalem in the First Crusade and look for articles of Christ's crucifixion. These are articles of power. People talk about now, Bob Lazar in 1989, in the late 80s, he was going to S4, Area 51, and he got a chance to see an alien craft, and they told him it was old. It was dug up a long time ago. Where'd it come from? Where'd that shit come from? Right.
Remember, he got arrested for pandering. Remember when Bob started coming out talking about this stuff, then he gets arrested for what he say he's a pimp in Vegas where prostitution is illegal.
Yeah, but he wasn't a pimp. He was going to a brothel. Well, they say he was going to a brothel because his wife had an affair with him because his wife had an affair with her flight instructor. Now, was that flight instructor planted? Possibly, but this is the thing. That's petty details, and see, that's the problem. As humans, we always concentrate on the petty details in front of us, and we're not looking beyond the fence. What's on the other side of that fence? What power is back there? What things are these people going after to use in magic rituals to grant them more power, to grant them followers, to grant them generals that have legions of soldiers under their control?
Divine intellect or divine preference or whatever. They're looking for those generals to lead these men who men will believe in them. These people believe in these guys no matter what they say. And so they'll do these impossible acts because they believe in them. Now, it gets sicker when you talk about things that we actually experience being from where we are, and we've always dropped hints about it. But when you try to sit here and you talk about child sacrifices and people doing these things to kids, and they're like, people don't believe you. But again, me and my brother have talked about the Franklin Credit Union scandal, where they were kidnapping kids from our home city and taking them to Washington to do bad things to these kids. And this goes all the way up the Republican Party, all the way up to at the time it was the first Bush was in office. And people deny that. But if you ever want to see the documentary, which the documentary Discovery Channel shot the documentary back in '91, I believe, and it's called The Conspiracy of Silence. It is on YouTube. Watch that documentary and watch how they were actually arresting the kids. They were arresting the facilitators. They never arrested one of the Johns. The people that were using these kids, people that were having sex with these kids, none of those guys ever got arrested in Omaha or in D.C.
The reporter that was actively, aggressively investigating that, he died in a plane crash within a year.
Yes, he took his son to the All-Star baseball game for Chicago, something like that, flew back, and they could tell by the way the plane exploded in the sky. It was not a crash. It was an explosion in the sky, and all kinds of crazy directions. But the bottom line is this: if any of you guys who want to research it on your own, go right ahead and research it on your own. And then you find that what you're finding out is that, again, they were taking kids from Boys Town. Boys Towns, Catholic Church runs them. Now we ain't talking. I'm not dissing no priest. I'm not going that direction. I'm just trying to tell you, these are the people in power. I'm talking about the Republican Party. I'm talking about Larry King was the black guy that was doing this. He was a facilitator. Even to this day, you hear these white guys talk about this guy named Black Larry. And there's another podcast called Tinfoil Hats, and they talk about this guy who was grabbing these kids all over town. All over the country, excuse me, and they were using them for impure parties and doing things to them, and it's sickening. But you always want to argue with people about that's not real, that's not true, and trust me, neither party is good. Don't be like the Republicans or Christians and the Democrats or this or that. No, this shit goes on in both parties, and you need to understand that these people in the annals of power, they believe that doing this is okay. You hear us talk about adrenochrome. When you look up that substance. Yes. Hold it. When that's look, nobody's saying this man ain't guilty of something. He probably did something, but what we're saying is those murders did not stop because he was arrested, and nobody wants to admit that. And when you try to have these conversations, like I said, whenever you have these conversations, just because somebody goes to jail,
what happens is when you have these conversations, people have adverse reactions. People they react to it. They don't think. They don't go inward. They have a reaction to it. They have a similar reaction that you have when you ask a person about wearing masks for the coronavirus that's wearing a mask inside their car when they're driving by their fucking self. You have that same type of knee-jerk reaction. You get the same type of knee-jerk reaction when you accuse a person that's Jewish of being a Zionist. And you say, oh, you're anti-Semitic. Well, hold on. Does that mean I hate Arabs and Jews? Because Semites are Jews and Arabs. That's a reaction. That's a reaction. So be careful. Be careful when speaking to people about these things, because they may have a reaction to it, because they don't want to rock the boat. They want to have they want to Netflix and chill and have their microwave dinner and their Postmates and whatever food they bring to their cocoon front door. Okay.
Hey, do you remember when Bush was the governor of Texas? And I can't remember which serial killer it was. I think it's the Candyman, but I don't want to give you the wrong serial killer. But one of these guys, he gives him a pardon, which he was on death row, killed 25 kids. They see he killed more kids than that, whatever. This is the one where they find kids buried on the beach in one of these beaches in Houston or Dallas. It's Houston, excuse me, but it was just one of these crazy stories when you realize this guy had been doing that shit for years. And when you find out the way he got busted was he used to have a kid that would help him get other kids. So this kid knew at some point in time that he was gonna kill him eventually. So it was one night he had brought two more kids. It was a girl and a boy. He brings them to this dude, and so he ropes all three of them up. And then the kid realizes tonight's the night he's gonna probably kill me and do stuff to me. So he pretended like the kid pretended like he. Oh no, I'm in on it. So the guy lets the kid go. The kid grabs the 22 and shoots the serial killer in the back. Well, then that's when they start finding out when the kids come to him like, hey man, I helped him. I brought 15 kids to him. But then you find these big, really sick, really, and so in the end, one of these guys was the guy supposed to be on death row, and Bush gives him a pardon. Now I spoke to one of my friends, and I don't, like I said, I try to not to, I don't want to put anybody out there, but he said like, look, I've done work for the CIA, and I've done work for the FBI, and you need to understand when you see that kind of stuff going on, chances are that dude might have been a CIA or FBI agent. We're not saying that he was doing that stuff for the government, but we're saying that sometimes these guys see shit and they go crazy and they do fucked up shit. And then what happens is when you see these people get pardoned, chances, you ever notice you almost never see any women get pardoned because nobody cares about them. It's unfortunate, but nobody cares about them. But you see these sick dudes get pardoned or from death row. They still alive. They're not being released from prison, but they'll get a stay of execution, whatever it's called.
So
he said the reason.
So here's the thing.
Go ahead.
I want people to start looking up things like illegal organ harvesting, because every week you can go online and you can look up missing children in D.C. and Baltimore, but D.C. in particular, there's probably about 5 black kids. They're always black children that go missing in the city of D.C. or District of Columbia. They always go missing, and it doesn't stop. Like nothing stops it. A pandemic nothing stops it. It just continues. And I'm wondering, like,
these numbers never go down, is what my brother's saying. If you look at for the last 10, 15 years, the number of missing children does not go down. I'm not saying the number goes up, but it's odd. Why is that number? Because they're being harvested.
Because they're being harvested. This is a black market industry, literally black market industry of children to be used for sex slaves, for these occult dark art parties, and then the adrenaline in their kidneys, in their adrenal glands, is then harvested and used and sold on the black market to wealthy celebrities, to aristocrats. Now, of course, these aristocrats are discerning, ethical types. So they only want the best adrenochrome. Is this from a nigger? I don't want any nigger chrome. I want Aryan chrome.
Look, what my brother's trying to tell you is that these people will do anything to stay young. They will do anything to
they fear death because they don't believe in
the afterlife.
They don't believe in
God.
They don't believe in God. They don't believe in a divine love beyond the earthly realm. That's why you see people pushing so hard now for this whole transcendental technological interface in their brains. They want to download their consciousness into a computer so they can live forever because they are afraid. They are afraid and they have no faith. They have no faith. They have no faith because look how much fear is being pushed by the mainstream media during the pandemic. And listen, I don't expect the news to talk about massive prayer. All I expect from the news is to talk about people that are recovering from this coronavirus hostage situation, this massive hostage situation that's going on across America. They don't talk about it. Even in alternative media, they don't talk about the recovery. I was shocked in some of the most left-leaning punk rock media sources. They have said nothing about the recovery stories. And I'm like, really? Nobody's talking about this? There was a World War II veteran who came down with coronavirus and lived. This dude fought Hitler and the axis of evil, caught coronavirus, and he lived. He ain't let that bullshit take him out. The thing is that, listen, Fear, and we're bringing it back. We're bringing it back now. Fear is an energy. Fear is a source of power that can be used by these demons, these creatures that they pray to on a level of existence that we can't see. They're called archons to some people. In the Nag Hammadi, the Gnostic text, they call them the archons. They are the go-between. They are the gatekeepers between the living and the realm beyond the dead.
Hey, check this out. I was watching
back off a little bit. You're too hot.
Oh, sorry. Hey, so Kat was talking about these ancient sites. You know, there's an ancient power grid and these ancient sites, and they were talking about. You see this in the Bible, but you see this in several mystic texts when they talk about as earth as in heaven. What they're saying is that there's something in the sky that coincides with these sites. Well, one thing this guy is saying is that like the pyramids were a power source. Those stone circles down in South Africa, they're a power source, and he's saying that humans are the power source. And he broke some stuff down. There's some stuff he said like that's not true. I know it's not true. I've studied that, but he was on a roll. And one of the things he was saying is that people are the power source, and one thing that these people in charge use is fear, and our fear is very powerful. Our fear creates power. And not just to rule people, but also our fear is an energy source. And many of these ancient sites, you know, he's breaking it down like
Adam's calendar is the one in South Africa that you're referring to. Adam's calendar is a stone formation that people believe, that researchers believe, was built by humans to appease a higher intelligence. But
they're saying that Adam's calendar is giving off energy, and they can't figure that out for the life of them. And they're like, well, what makes this site special? And so when the Bible says on earth as in heaven, what they're telling you is that somewhere in the sky coincides with something on the earth, and you got a power source going back and forth. And so this guy is saying that, like I said, some of the stuff he said was fruity. Like, oh, what the hell, this is bullshit, fugazi. But some of the other stuff he's saying, I'm like, yeah, that's some deep shit. And so you got to understand that your fear is feeding somebody else's power. And that's
there are highways inside the body. In Chinese medicine, you learn about the meridians and these highways that run blood. The blood, which carries the energy, which is your life force, which we call chi or ki, it runs through the body's meridians. We are a macrocosm of the microcosm, which meaning we are just a representation of God's creation on a larger scale. And if you look at the earth has ley lines in specific places,
meridians,
meridians on the earth, like meridians on the human body, which is why they call it the prime meridian. That's the only time you hear about it talked about or spoken about in regular everyday school books. The prime meridian. Why is it called a meridian? Oh, it's just a line that goes from north to south and it just separates.
Is it an imaginary invisible line?
Mm-hmm.
No, meridians have to do with power sources and power.
Which is why monoliths and stone structures are built in specific places, which is also why the Great Pyramids are built in alignment with the Dog Star.
Orion's belt. Look, here's the other thing is that, you know, you remember when Ben Carson was running for office and some white guy asked him about the pyramids, because some speech he gave years ago where he said that the pyramids
he was laughed at because he gave an answer that people didn't want to hear and weren't expecting.
Yeah. I had an argument with a guy at work. Argument's the wrong word. I had a discussion with a guy at work. I said, well, look, that guy is standing by what he believes. He said that stuff a long time ago, and people were trying to catch him off guard and embarrass him because he said the pyramids were grain storage. Well, and so this is a white guy. I said, look, white man, tell me what the pyramids were. He said, tombs. I said, pyramids are not tombs because no bodies are found in pyramids. So the Great Pyramids do not have bodies in them. Nobody knows what the Great Pyramids are. So stop trying to.
They were initiation chambers for the priest class and the royalty of Egypt. Because if you ever go and you visit the Great Pyramid and you are so lucky to lay in the king's chamber in the sarcophagus, even if for 30 seconds, you will feel a surge of energy that has
Power.
nothing to do with your heartbeat or your pulse or anything inside of your body. You are inside of a battery. You are inside of an energetic battery that is generated by the earth because there are
A
meridians
huge one.
and
A huge
energy that
battery.
flows through these meridians to that point and to many different points on the earth. And these
They even talk
people,
about now that there was an underground river that actually gave it static. This is real electricity. We're not talking about some symbolic stuff. We're not talking about maybe no. This is real power. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, I was trying.
hydroelectric power. But here's the deal. The thing is that people in power know these things because they belong to mystery schools. And mystery schools take all different types. You know, they call them secret societies. They call it Christian mysticism. They call it
They
Gnosticism.
call you the initiate. In the initiate, the initiate. What they're saying is that you got to be initiated into that school, and then you're taught art. And then as you each level you go up, you find out the last thing you learn was full of shit, and you learn more and more and more. So beware of that secret, the dark secret societies, or the how do they call it? Like the secrets, because they're keeping it from everybody.
Because
And
they know that if they keep this information to themselves, they will have power. And they can
they will maintain power. Yes.
and they will have people who will pledge their allegiance to them because those people, those small little men, want to be powerful. And so what they do is they give them crumbs, tiny little pieces of information. They're not gonna give you the whole loaf of bread. They're gonna give you a handful of crumbs, be like, here, little motherfucker, eat this. This will sustain you and keep you going.
Look, I always use the term house Negro, and everybody thinks that when I'm saying it, I'm talking about political. I'm also talking about, you're talking about the police. Like for instance, the police. They're beating up people for no reason, just to run back to their masters. And
Yes.
like, hey, see, that's a house nigga. It's not just about where that word is used all over the place. Those people will do anything for their masters just to gain favor and get a little bit, a modicum of power or
Listen,
money or
listen.
whatever.
This is how you deal with a cop. If you're dealing with an asshole cop, not a good cop, I'm talking about an asshole cop, and he's threatening you, you ask him, does he want any more strikes on his service record, on his service jacket? And he's gonna look at you puzzled because he knows exactly what you're saying. Because you're speaking in a language that he understands. If he
It's a
gets
secret language.
if he starts to get a bunch of complaints that go on his service jacket, he cannot be promoted. He might even be demoted. So you are then threatening his ascendancy in the ranks. So use that to your advantage if you ever feel threatened or your life is in danger by some stooge, some knucklehead who is abusing their power to make some dark arts motherfucker happy. Because that's what's
Look,
going on
language
there.
is important. Language is so
It is
important
so
because these people
important.
are they're doing rituals behind closed doors. Okay, we'll talk about America at some other time and who was here before the country that you know of America. There were already people here. There were already Africans here. There were already like Iroquois. The word America, the whole American Vespucci, all that's bullshit. There's more truth to that. There's truth out there. But what you got to understand is that this place was set up long before this country that we know got here, and there were people doing things, and there were democracies and things like that existing. The Iroquois believed in stuff that you wouldn't believe. So, yes, but you got to understand these people in power know that. That goes back to the Skull and Bones. They knew that this Indian leader Geronimo had power, real power. He understood stuff. So you know what? I might not understand the stuff, but I'll grab his bones and I'll worship them, and maybe some of that light will shine down on me. It's wrong. It's messed up, but don't sit here and deny this shit until you've done your research. I'm
Listen,
sorry, I didn't mean to.
so what I want to say in closing is that going back decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years, tens of thousands of years to Atlantis and beyond, to the continent of Mu before that, there have always been power structures and struggles for power. And this occurs between the physical and the immaterial plane. And there's players on both sides, some good, some bad. But you see this struggle after with each man that's born, the struggle continues. And you will always see this struggle between good and evil. And these people that we're talking about in particular, the people who belong to the court of evil, these agents of darkness who worship these dark entities, who are willing to do their bidding at whatever the cost. The child's life, the life of his relative, the blood of an innocent, it doesn't matter. These people have fought wars and used them as smokescreens just so they could find a spear that had the blood of Christ on it, so they could use it in a magic ritual. These people have fought wars as a smokescreen so they can go to Iraq and get ancient alien artifacts so they could use them in magic rituals. These people are in power. And guess what? It's not just on the highest level, because it goes all the way down to the most pettiest crime. And who's enforcing that crime? And you will come face to face with the people who enforce their law that is interpreted to benefit them. And these people who you will see that do secret handshakes, that go to parties where everybody has a tux on and it's a 10,000 plate gala, these people that I'm referring to, they worship different gods than you and I. They worship darkness. And they would do anything to bring about the end times. They would do anything to bring about their way of existence. So you have to arm yourself with knowledge and be prepared to fight these people. And like Duct Tape said, your words make all the difference in the world. It's how you speak to these people when you come across them. Do not show fear, because you are feeding them when you give them fear. When you show fear, you are feeding their bosses. You are feeding the entities they pray to. Do not show fear. Show divine consciousness, divine righteousness, backed by love, backed by justice, true justice. And with that, we out. Peace.
Holla.